Hello, 7th grade students. We're continuing with our read of Refugee by Alan Gratz. We are beginning on page 99, Isabel, the Straits of Florida, somewhere north of Cuba, 1994, one day from home. If you recall, as we finished Isabel's story, their boat engine sputtered and died. And so they are in the water, one day from home in the Straits of Florida. They're trying to reach Florida and escape from Fidel Castro and Cuba. Isabel watched as Poppy, Senor Castillo, Luis, and Amara huddled over the boat engine, trying to figure out why it wouldn't start. It had something to do with overheating, Senor Castillo had said. Amara was pouring seawater over it, trying to cool it. Meanwhile, Ivan and Isabel had been tasked with scooping the water back out of the bottom of the boat. The sock stuffed into the bullet hole was soaked through, and it dripped, dripped, dripped water into Castro's face at the bottom of the boat like a leaky faucet. They had been drifting north in the Gulf Stream with the motor silent for more than an hour now, and no one was singing or dancing or laughing anymore. Ahead of Isabel, her mother and Senor Castillo slept against each other on the narrow bench at the front of the boat, where the prow came to a point. Lito sat on the middle bench, right above Isabel and Ivan. You do have family in Miami, Isabel's grandfather told her as she and Ivan worked. When the news lady asked you if you had family in El Norte, you said no. But you do, Lito said. My brother, Guillermo. Isabel and Ivan looked up at each other in surprise. I didn't know you had a brother, Isabel said to her grandfather. He left in the airlifts in the 1970s, the Freedom Flights, when the U.S. airlifted political dissidents off the island, Lito explained. But Guillermo was no dissident. He just wanted to live in the U.S. I could have gone too. I was a police officer once, like Luis and Amara. Did you know that? Back before Castro, when Batista was president. Isabel knew that, and that Lito had lost his job during the revolution and had been sent to cut cane in the fields instead. I could have pulled strings, Lito said, called in favors, gotten me and your grandmother off the island. Then you would have been born in El Norte, Ivan told Isabel. She paused in her scooping, thinking how different her life might be right now, born in the United States. It was almost inconceivable. We stayed because Cuba was our home, Lito said. I didn't leave when Castro took over in 1959. I didn't leave when the U.S. sent planes in the 70s. And I didn't leave in the 80s when all those people sailed out of Mariel Harbor. Lito shook his head at the tight cluster of people worrying over the engine at the back of the boat and thumped his fist against the side. It was a mistake, leaving on this sinking coffin. I should have stayed put. All of us should have. How is Cuba worse now than it ever was? We've always been beholden to somebody else. First it was Spain, then it was the US, then it was Russia. First Batista, and then Castro. We should have waited. Things change. They always change. But do they ever get better? Ivan asked. Isabel thought that was a good question. All her life, things had only gotten worse. First the Soviet Union collapsing, then her parents fighting, then her father trying to leave, then her grandmother dying. She waited for Lito to tell her different, to tell her that things would get better. But he looked out at the black water instead. Isabel and Ivan shared a glance. Lito's silence was answer enough. Someone would have done something, Lito said at last. We should have waited. But they were going to arrest Poppy, said Isabel. I know you love your father, Chabela, but he's a fool. Isabel's cheeks burned hot with anger and embarrassment. She loved Lito, but she loved her Poppy too, and she hated to hear Lito say bad things about him. But even worse, he was saying these things in front of her best friend. She glanced quickly at Ivan. He kept his eyes on his work, pretending not to have heard. But they were right at Lito's feet. He could hear everything, and Lito wasn't finished. He's risking his life for this. He's risking your life and your mother's life and his unborn child's life. And for what? Lito asked. He doesn't even know. He can't say. Ask him why he wants to go to the States, and all he can say is freedom. That's not a plan. How is he going to put a roof over your head and food on your table any better than he did in Cuba? Lito raised his eyebrows at Isabel. He's taking you away from who you are, what you are. How are you ever going to learn to count clave in Miami? The U.S. has no soul. In Havana, you would have learned it without even trying. Clave is the hidden heartbeat of the people beneath whatever song Batista or Castro is playing. Oh, hush, Poppy, Isabel's mother said sleepily. She'd been awake enough to hear them after all, at least the last part. Miami is just North Cuba. Mommy shifted and went back to sleep, but Isabel worried that Lito was right. She had never been able to count clave, but she had always assumed it would come to her eventually, that the rhythm of her homeland would one day whisper in secrets to her soul. But would she ever hear it now? Like trading her trumpet, had she swapped the one thing that was really hers, her music, for the chance to keep her family together? We should go back, Lito said. He wobbled to his feet. We're not too far gone, and with Castro being so lenient right now, we won't be punished for leaving. No, Lito, Isabel said. No. As much as she feared the loss of her music, her soul, she wouldn't trade that for her family. She grabbed Lito and held him back. Don't. We can't go back. They'll arrest Poppy. Panic rose like the distant rumble of thunder in Isabel's ears, but then Ivan and Lito both looked up, like they could hear it too. It wasn't Isabel's fear that shook her deep down to the pit of her stomach. It was the enormous tanker headed right for them. Page 104, Mahmoud, Izmir, Turkey, 2015, 4 days from home. Mahmoud stood in a wet parking lot with his family, a light drizzle making everything slick and damp. Down past a pebbly brown beach, the Mediterranean Sea churned like a washing machine. A huge black and red cargo ship slid by on the horizon. No boat today, the Syrian man who was working for the Turkish smugglers told them. Tomorrow. But I was told it would be today, Mahmoud's father said. We hurried to get here today. The smuggler raised a hand and shook his head. No. You have money? Yes. Tomorrow. You'll get a text tomorrow. But where are we supposed to go? Mahmoud's mother asked the smuggler. Mahmoud couldn't believe it. They had spent 2 long days in cars and buses trying to get here on time for the boat Dad had hired to take them across the sea to Greece, and now there was no boat. There's a hotel on the next block, the smuggler said. They take Syrians. We're trying to save money. We're going all the way to Germany, Dad told him. There's a park nearby, the smuggler said. A park? You mean sleep outside? But I have a baby, Mom said, gesturing to Hannah in her arms. The smuggler shrugged as if it didn't matter to him. His phone rang and he turned away to take it. Tomorrow, he told Mahmoud's parents over his shoulder, you will get a text tomorrow. Be ready. Mahmoud's father huffed, but immediately turned to his family and put on a smile. Well, we always talked about taking a Mediterranean vacation, he said. We've got an extra night in Izmir. Who wants to go out dancing? I just want to find someplace dry where I can sleep, said Mom. Dad led them in the direction of the hotel. All the shops were closing as they walked back through town, but Mahmoud marveled at how clean everything looked here in Turkey. There was no rubble, no twisted metal. The cobblestone streets were in perfect condition, and flowers grew in front of perfect little houses and shops. Shining cars and vans drove past on the road, and lights glowed in the windows of buildings. Do you remember when it used to be like this in Syria? Mahmoud asked his little brother. Walid was gawking just as much as Mahmoud, but he didn't say anything. Mahmoud took a deep, frustrated breath. He and Walid had had their fights. They were brothers after all. But ever since Mahmoud could remember, Walid had been more like his best friend and constant companion. They played together, prayed together, shared a bedroom together. Walid had been the hyper one, bouncing off walls and hopping on furniture and kicking soccer balls in the hall. As annoying as his brother had been sometimes, Mahmoud wished he would show a little of the old crazy again. Not even the Ninja Turtle that Mahmoud had bought for him in Keyless had cheered Walid up. Later in the hotel lobby, Mahmoud was still thinking about how he could get his brother back when he heard the desk clerk say they had no rooms left. Maybe someone will share with us, Mahmoud's father suggested to the clerk. You will forgive me, said the desk clerk, but the rooms already have 3 families apiece. Mahmoud's heart sank. 3 families in each room, and the hotel was full? What were the chances they would find a room anywhere else? Dad searched on his phone and tried calling around, but it was the same story everywhere. But how can they be so full, Mahmoud's mother said. They can't all be leaving tomorrow. With nowhere else to go, they found the part the smuggler told them about. But there was no room for them there either. All the other refugees who had been turned away from the hotels were there, some sleeping on benches in the rain. Others lucky enough to have tents that looked like they had been there for more than a day or two. Mahmoud slumped in the rain. He was so wet, so tired, he just wanted somewhere warm and dry to sleep. We should have stayed at the refugee camp, Mom said. No, said his father. No. We move forward, always forward, and we don't stop until we get to Germany. We don't want to end up stuck in this place. Let's just see if we can find a dry spot for the night. Mahmoud spied a thin Syrian boy about his age approaching each of the families in the park, offering them something. Mahmoud wandered closer to have a look. The boy saw his interest and came over to him. Want to buy some tissues? The boy asked. He offered Mahmoud a small unopened plastic pack of tissues, just 10 Syrian pounds or 10 Turkish kuruş. No, thank you, Mahmoud said. Do you need water, life vest, a phone charger? I can get it for you for a price. We need a place to stay, Mahmoud said. The boy looked Mahmoud and his family over. I know a place, the boy said. I will show you for 2,000 Syrian pounds, or 25 Turkish lira. 2,000 Syrian pounds was almost 10 American dollars. A lot of money when you had a whole continent to cross. But the rain was getting stronger and there was no place dry left in the park. When Mahmoud told his father the boy's offer, Dad was willing to pay. The boy led them away from the coast to a neighborhood where weeds grew up through the cobblestones and the houses had metal gates on the windows instead of flower boxes. One of the street lamps flickered, giving the street an ominous energy. The boy lifted a broken chain link fence that led to a parking lot. Here, he said. Mahmoud's father gave the rest of his family a dubious look and led them under the fence. They followed the boy to a large square building with boarded up windows and graffiti-covered walls. One of the boards blocking the door from trespassers had been ripped off, and they pushed their way inside. It was a mall. It was a mall, or it had been once. A large open courtyard with an empty fountain in the middle was ringed with storefronts that went up for 4 levels. A few of the shops were lit up with lamps connected to extension cords, and others burned kerosene lamps and candles. But most of the shops weren't shops anymore. They were little apartments where people lived, squatters in an abandoned shopping mall. The boy led them to an empty yogurt shop on the 3rd floor, next to a former music store that was home to a Syrian family of 6. They looked like they had been there for a while. They had a tattered old couch and a hot plate, and sheets hung from ropes to quarter the space into little rooms. The yogurt shop had no furniture and a broken linoleum floor. Something skittered away in the darkness when they went inside. It's just for the night, Mahmoud's father said. You leave tomorrow, the boy said, on a boat? Then you need life vests, most definitely, or else you drown when your boat flips. Mahmoud's eyes went wide. He shivered in soaking wet clothes. He didn't like any part of this plan. His father raised his hands to his family. The boat isn't going to flip, he told them, or run out of gas or wreck on the rocks, the boy said. Then you drown. Dad sighed. All right, all right. Where do we buy life vest? We'll stop there on page 110, and we'll begin tomorrow with Joseph, who is somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean. Thank you for listening, 7th grade students. Enjoy your day and take care.